Okay, welcome to the show. Alyssa, last week we discussed how we anticipated that June would be an annoying month.
Living up to its promise.
Yeah, so far it's really delivered. So let's dive into the news frustration first, because we knew that it would be annoying. It is annoying. That doesn't change the fact that it's annoying and we are experiencing frustration. So, Alyssa, what about this last week of news have you found so frustrating and annoying?
Where to begin? Well, I think Joe Manchin's pretty annoying. I think that the issue, here's the thing, Erin, I guess in a nutshell, this is what is so annoying all around 360, is that when the United States Senate had to vote on voting rights legislation under President Bush, it passed 98-0. And I just want to know what the fuck has happened since then, aside from a party which is currently incapable of identifying what was a fucking insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. And since these are the people we're negotiating with, I guess my big question is, Joe Manchin, why do you think this is on the level? It's not on the level. No one's ever going to agree. There's not going to be anything bipartisan. Like, Erin, it's exhausting.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't know if Joe Manchin actually thinks that it's on the level or if he's just trying to drag his feet so he doesn't actually have to do anything. Because that's something that I suspect when it comes to a lot of self-identified moderates or people that are horny for bipartisanship. I think they don't actually want to do anything because they know bipartisanship is like an impossible dream.
It's not going to happen right now. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And I think that we have a limited, and by we I mean Democrats, have a limited amount of time to get things done, right? Mm-hmm. Just fucking ram that shit through before there's a midterm and God knows what happens. Mm-hmm. And we know that Republicans would not be frittering this moment if shoe was on the other foot. And they haven't in the past frittered moments when they have had the chance to ram through bad shit. So I guess I wish that we could just kind of get with what's happening here, Joe Manchin, and, get some good stuff done. Help people.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, it's not like people in his state won't be helped by, so many of these bills, which are just dithering right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, in the discussion of Joe Manchin and his desire to preserve the filibuster for question mark reasons, and his desire to seek out bipartisan compromise for question mark reasons, which to me kind of reads like if I were walking down the street by myself and somebody came up to me with a knife and they're like, I'm going to stab you. And I was like, don't stab me. And then somebody showed up, Joe Manchin showed up and they're like, well, can they just kind of stab you a little? That's how I feel the Republican party is to America right now. No, you can't fucking stab us a little. You're not going to, no stabbing.
No stabbing. And you know what's really wild is that as you go through and you read all of these interviews and see these interviews that Joe Manchin's doing, I feel like Chris Wallace is kind of on our side.
Yeah.
He's like, Joe, Senator Manchin.
If you were to keep the idea that maybe you would vote to kill the filibuster, wouldn't that give Republicans an incentive to actually negotiate? Because old Joe Manchin's out there and who knows what he's going to do by taking it off the table. Haven't you empowered Republicans to be obstructionists?
Yeah, and the thing is that I think a lot of problems with political coverage is that it's top down instead of bottom up. So we're talking about all of these wealthy old people totally insulated from the consequences of their actions having slap fights on Capitol Hill and angling for book deals and Fox News contracts, when really what we should be talking about is who are the people that are not being served by their inaction? What is on the table? What in the infrastructure bill, there are provisions that are designed specifically to make life easier for, let's just pick out the care piece of that, for parents and for care providers. And that is an urgent need for millions of people in this country and has been an urgent need for decades. And it's just getting worse. The longer nothing gets done, the worse it is for the people who either provide care or who are responsible for finding care for people who are dependent on them. And that's that is the consequence here, not Manchin's political career.
Right. And also, not for nothing, but in the care pieces of this, it's not like we're trying to catapult America to the #1 spot in the world as like progressive caretaking economy. Mm-hmm. We're last in the world. Like we offer fewer social safety nets than almost any country you can name. And so I think that's as the Republicans are like, socialism, it's like actually just the rest of the entire fucking world.
Right. And other problems that Republicans have been freaking out about that I don't think the mainstream media has connected the dots enough on is that the infrastructure bill has provisions in it that would theoretically make it more attractive for people to have families or possible for people to have families.
Right.
Over the last month, Republicans have been freaking out about the birth rate falling. Meanwhile, they're trying to restrict immigration, which would increase the number of workers providing a tax base. In the meantime, they're trying to make life more difficult for parents. Many people are having fewer children than they want because of systemic problems in place. Like, I don't think we should try to like goose the birth rate by forcing people to have kids or convincing people to have kids. I'm talking about people who already want to have children or who want to have more children, but who are deciding not to because of systemic obstacles in place for that. So like $225 billion for childcare in Biden's proposed infrastructure plan, that would probably fucking help.
Yeah, that would probably help.
A $200 billion for free universal preschool would probably help.
Probably help.
You know, there's $109 billion in there for 2 years of free community college, which fits into the education piece. That would help young people get started. Like how many people do you know were like completely hamstrung by student loan payments that they were still making into their 30s and approaching their 40s? Like I just finished paying mine off a couple years ago, and that was only because after I turned 30, I started making more money. So I was able to like race to the end. But if I hadn't had like a couple good breaks and gotten a couple good jobs, I would still be paying them off.
And still be paying interest.
I would still be paying interest, which benefits nobody but financial institutions. So I think we can bitch about Joe Manchin being an annoying person who seems to be not that intelligent because he is dumb and he doesn't seem like he's a very smart man. And it's gross that one guy from West Virginia can hold this up. But like, let's not lose sight of what is being held up. It's this.
Right.
You know, are you somebody who could benefit from universal preschool, free universal preschool? Do you know somebody who could? Like, do you know somebody who provides childcare who could benefit from aid to make their wages more livable? Like paid family and medical leave. Do you know anyone who could use that?
Like everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone could use that.
Literally everyone could use that. Nutrition programs. I know a lot of people who could use that. You know, it's like that is what Joe Manchin is standing in between. He's standing in between us being an embarrassment in the rest of the world when it comes to the way we treat caretakers and us being passable.
Passable, that's it. We're aiming for passable right now.
It is like the lowest possible bar, and Joe Manchin refuses to clear it because he believes in institutions. I'm sorry. Like, the institutions are why we're here. Fuck them. You know?
Fuck them.
Fuck them. Here's some other things that Joe Manchin and institutional reverence are blocking because the filibuster still exists. The For the People Act, which we touched on. The $15 minimum wage. DC statehood. Immigration reform. Gun violence reform, LGBTQ protection. Happy Pride, by the way.
Happy Pride.
Joe Manchin is why we can't have the Equality Act. Labor rights, policing, and women's rights.
And also, Erin, to reinforce the point you made earlier, it is not as if Joe Manchin is saying this is bad for the people of my state. You know what I mean? Like, I get that. I do. If he was like, this is all bad for West Virginia and therefore I can't support it. He's literally doing it for the filibuster. For a vestige of that institution that most Americans couldn't explain to you if they had to. And that's not a knock on Americans. It's because it's so stupid.
It is extreme. Like, I don't expect people to know the workplace policies of, like, you know, it's a dumbass Senate workplace policy. And like, it's holding all of this stuff hostage. And it just, oh my God. Alyssa, I've gotten to the point where I can't even, I've gotten to a George W. Bush point with Mitch McConnell's voice. And by that, I mean, when George W. Bush was the president, when I would hear his voice on NPR, I would have to turn it off because I couldn't listen to it. I got to that point with Donald Trump's voice pretty early too. But I have arrived at the point where I'm like, I can't listen to your fucking voice.
Yeah, fucking mute yourself.
I just, I don't know. I don't know what is, I mean, it is going to be an annoying June. Like, is there a possible long game that Democrats are playing? Is there a possible good outcome to all this?
If there is, they should clue us in.
Yeah.
I mean, even have just a talker's call. You know what I mean? Like, do something.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything good. I also want to talk about another like weird institutional protectionism thing because, look, when Joe Biden was first elected president, I was very happy that Donald Trump would no longer be the president. At the same time, I fully expected that because Joe Biden is pretty to the right of me politically, that I would spend a lot of the Biden administration being frustrated with the fact that he wasn't meeting the needs of the progressives that elected him. I was pleasantly surprised by the first few months of his administration, by the people that he chose to surround himself with, and by some policy priorities, and the COVID relief package I thought was really impressive. His response to the pandemic has been pretty good. I think now I'm done with the honeymoon phase, or I'm starting to get kind of frustrated. I don't think that the bipartisan thing is working or possible, nor should we even try for it. And I also, this was the news story that kind of put me into like fuck it territory. On Monday, Biden's Justice Department, led by Merrick Garland, basically adopted former President Trump's position on E. Jean Carroll's defamation lawsuit against Trump. So basically, the Justice Department was going to continue to defend former President Trump against this defamation lawsuit. And the Biden administration was like, we didn't know, you know, the White House was like, we didn't know about this. We're distancing ourselves. So fucking stop it.
It's one of those things where you and I were texting about it, and I was like, wait a minute, am I having a reading comprehension issue? Like, do I have to get the pen and the ruler out and go line by line because I'm misunderstanding what's happening? But we were not misunderstanding what's happening, and I will say it is highly confusing.
Yeah, it sort of is like, it's like, okay, if the government is a body and the White House is the brain, the Justice Department would be like the hand. Why can't you control your own hand?
It's like, on the one hand, Trump was controlling everything, and we were like, that's terrible, and that is terrible. Now, I feel like we've overcorrected potentially into a place where it's like, nope, they're going to do what they're going to do. And it's like, no, I really think we don't have to take up Trump's fight on this one.
Yeah, I feel like defending rape accusations, like lawsuit against a guy who is currently pretending that he's still the president and pretending that he will be reinstated with a non-existent clause in August. Like,
I feel like it's okay to say fuck that guy.
Yeah, that guy hasn't really earned it. He hasn't earned anything.
The guy who couldn't control himself enough to come to your inauguration.
Yeah, he can pay for his own lawyers. I think.
I agree.
That's enough. Okay, so it was a frustrating week, but there was a bright spot. And Alyssa, you had a nominee for toast this week. I would love for you to take it away.
We are going to toast the best of Monacos. Lisa Monaco, Deputy Attorney General, who this week, when I was eating dinner, I got to see her on television saying that Literally, they went after the ransomware assholes who got the ransom from Colonial Pipeline, and they fucking got the money back. DOJ got the money back.
Yeah.
I mean, what? It's like, is this an FX special that's coming up next? I couldn't believe it. I was so excited for her, and just like watching her stand up there and like, wait, I want to find the quote that she said, because it was so... This is like what I heard her saying on television, and I did like a record scratch head tilt.
Today, we turned the tables on DarkSide. After Colonial Pipeline's quick notification to law enforcement and pursuant to a seizure warrant issued by the United States District Court for the Northern District of California earlier today, the Department of Justice has found and recaptured the majority of the ransom Colonial paid to the DarkSide network in the wake of last month's ransomware attack.
Thank you, Lisa Monaco, the best Monaco.
That was good work by Lisa Monaco for sure. I was thinking we've had a pretty banner week when it comes to like tech and crime stopping. Large scale tech and crime stopping.
Yeah.
I'm not talking like bullshit like
no, like
stuff.
caper level,
yes.
Steven Spielberg, Ron Howard executed shit.
Exactly, like Ocean's 500 or something like that. Like that. Did you hear
Squared?
Exactly. The FBI and in cooperation with a couple other law enforcement agencies,
800 arrests.
800 arrests in like a massive like drug smuggling
Sting.
So
good.
They made a fake messaging app.
And they all fell for it.
Now, that would be a really good tech thriller for whoever is able to write it, because all of these criminals thought that they were using an encrypted messaging system, but it was really a plant by like an informant. It was
so good.
They were just messaging the FBI like
the whole time.
Do you have the giant tubs of fruit disguising drugs? Yep, I've got it. I don't know how they would message each other, but yep, the bananas and cocaine are on their way. Cool. I'll go pick it up from the port city. It was crazy. It was all going to the FBI. Look, that's great. That's cool.
It was great. That was something to really celebrate.
It's cool. And Lisa Monaco's work in somehow seizing most of the ransom back from a hacker network, pretty good.
Pretty good.
Really excited for our interview today. Alyssa, I wonder if you saw this on the New York Times website. Did you see that tool where you can type in your zip code and it tells you?
I did.
Okay. How did your zip code vote in 2020?
We were plus 75 for Biden.
You were plus 75 for Biden.
Yeah. Just my zip code, though, not my county.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I was curious. I love like maps and I love looking at numbers. The county where I was born was like plus 27 for Trump. But the last three places where I've lived for a long time were at least plus 33 for Biden. And it made me think, I have really spent my adult life in the bluest of the blue parts of this country. And there are people who are not in blue parts of this country who are still working their butts off, busting their asses, and working to be heard in places where it's not easy. And one of those places is Texas. And one of the people who is absolutely busting their ass is our guest today, Representative Nicole Collier. Representative Collier is an attorney, a mother, and a grandmother, and she's currently a Texas state representative serving District 95. A few weeks ago, she and her Democratic colleagues walked out of a vote which stalled the passage of a Republican-sponsored restrictive voting bill. Welcome, Representative Collier. Welcome to the blue areas from an area that's a little bit purple.
Thank you so much. I feel at home with you guys in the blue.
I know, it's nice. I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on in Texas and all the work you guys are doing, because it's really important that I think people all over the country are made aware of it. Texas has been in the news a lot recently for some alarming reasons, from voting rights bills to the new abortion law. And all of that has thrown a line to Republicans who are looking to exercise control wherever they can. With Republicans trying to make laws left and right to restrict voting access, what are they so scared of? What are they scared of in Texas, and what do you think they're scared of nationally?
Well, I suspect they're scared of Texas turning blue. I completely agree. This is SB 7, which was the election bill that the Republicans filed, is basically what they say is an attempt to prevent fraud, even though we don't have widespread fraud in Texas. Our general elections in the 2020 was overseen by a Republican appointed official, our Secretary of State. And she said that the elections were safe, secure, and successful. So I'm not sure what they're trying to address other than the fact that they're afraid of losing power.
You and your fellow Democrats walked out of a vote that would have imposed very harsh restrictions on voting rights in the states affecting especially people of color. Can you talk to us about the GOP's voting bill and why it's so dangerous? Can you take us through the moment you left the chamber? How did it feel?
Well, you know what? It was, as a legislator, you try to work with your colleagues. You try to come up with measures that can be agreeable or a compromise for both sides. But that didn't happen with SB 7. We were shut out of the process, basically, of crafting the bill, amending the bill, and then, basically sounding in on the bill when it came to the floor. So we tried to amend the bill. We sent the bill. We had amendments on it. It went to the Senate. It came back totally different. In fact, it was 30 plus pages longer than when it left our chamber. And there were so many provisions in there that we never even vetted. There was no public opportunity to discuss these measures that were in the new one. So there is a procedural rule in the Texas legislature called calling the question. So if they get 25 signatures, they can end debate on the bill and take it up for a vote. Democrats are outnumbered. There's 67 Democrats in the Texas legislature, in the House chamber. We're outnumbered. We don't have enough votes on our own to pass a bill, but we do have enough votes to break quorum. So when we realized that the writing was on the wall, that they were going to end debate and prevent us from asking questions to establish legislative intent on the bill, which would help, our lawsuit in the future, we took it upon ourselves to use the nuclear option. We used every tool in our toolbox up until then, and we used that last tool, and we decided that we had to walk out in order to protect the fair and free elections for all Texans.
How did you feel? Was it kind of exhilarating? Was it were you scared? What did that feel like?
So I'm supposedly in leadership is what they call it. When you have a chair position, I'm a chair of a committee. And you know what? That was the last thing from my mind, because I knew that all was on the line at that point. So whether I had a leadership position or not, I was going to make that walk out of the chamber to make sure that the voting rights of all Texans were protected. So I really didn't think about it like that at the moment, but afterwards I was like, whoa, look what we just did.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to go ahead with things that are kind of scary and then get scared afterwards once it's already done.
Right.
So now that the bill is stalled, Governor Abbott has vowed to eventually bring this to a vote. How do you and your fellow Democrats plan to keep pressure on?
Well, that's a good question, because I don't know if we could stop it, because we don't have the votes, but we can keep the pressure on by letting the public know, our constituents know, that this bill does not protect the integrity of the ballot. It just makes it harder for people to vote. So that's what we're going to continue to do, is spread the word, spread the message, and then also continue to press Congress to pass the For the People Act or the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That's the only way we're going to get protections in Texas, since we don't have a majority, is if we have some type of oversight from the federal government. And under the Biden administration, that's our best chance. But we need Senate to end that filibuster. So, keeping pressure on Congress, and then also continuing to let our constituents know that this bill is not in their best interest. It's really the Republican Party pandering to a small part of their base to appease them. So that's basically where we're going with this.
How important is it for the U.S. Senate to pass H.R. 1, the For the People Act, or the John Lewis Voting Rights Act?
It's so important because let me tell you, SB 7 was bad as it is. In SB 7, we saw them eliminate morning voting for early voting on Sundays. And traditionally, that's when many Black churches have souls to the polls, where you leave church and you go directly to the polls. By eliminating that morning voting opportunity, it loses the momentum that is gained by doing that activity. Also, Harris County in Texas, they had their county elections administrator was so innovative. They really worked hard to get out the vote. They proactively sent out mail-in ballots to those registered voters, and they offered drive-through voting and 24-hour voting, and they saw record numbers of voters participate. Now, that's what we're talking about, moving in the right directions. And when our Secretary of State said that those elections were safe, secure, and successful, that tells me that those opportunities can be done. But this bill, SB 7, would eliminate that opportunity and say that you can only vote in a structure. In fact, they were so specific that they said it had to be a stable structure that was permanent. But then they forgot that their Republican Party in some rural areas vote in trailers. So then they put an exception for trailers. So, they try to work it out for themselves, but literally they put in provisions that were targeted at minority, people of color voters. Mm-hmm. And one of the other provisions made it harder to do a mail-in ballot. So right now they have 2 envelopes that people have to fill out. You have to sign on the inside of the envelope, but then they were going to add a provision that said on the outside envelope, on the inside, you had to put the last 4 digits of your social security number or driver's license or indicate that you didn't have one. The problem with that, other than the fact that it's more bureaucratic crap, is that it is a mistake. If somebody makes a mistake and doesn't do that, then their ballot is not counted. There was no cure opportunity provided to them. And so that was just another way to discount or disregard the vote of people. And so, this can only get worse. We knew that going in. We knew that there is an opportunity for this bill to become worse when the governor calls us back for a special session. We expect that there'll be cameras in the polling location. They already in that bill had poll watchers, partisan poll watchers that were not trained. And then I can see them coming back to say that those untrained poll watchers could also videotape people in the polling location. So, we suspect that it's going to come back. And Texas already has voting laws that are the most strict in all of the nation. We have the strictest voting laws. And to add these provisions on top just really is absurd. In fact, they say everything is bigger in Texas. Mm-hmm. Well, I imagine that Texas is the biggest violator of the U.S. Constitution as well. Because we also passed, and not me, because I didn't vote for that, was the fetal heartbeat bill.
Yeah, and on that note, Texas has been getting a lot of negative attention for that bill, and in our opinion, rightfully so. But there have been kind of glimmers of hope and positivity, like high school senior Paxton Smith delivering that speech that went viral against the heartbeat bill. And there's other positive things happening in Texas. So I would love to hear from you. What is something that's really positive, that's flying under the radar, that's happening in Texas? And how are you working to give your constituents who agree with you on progressive issues some hope that there is a path forward for them in your state?
Wow, that's a great question. So for the first part, Paxton was so courageous. I admire her, ability to just speak out and speak up for all women. Just love that. That's a great thing about Texas. Simone Biles is a great thing about Texas. But in terms of what else did we do? Well, I'm not sure if we can say we did a lot because our infrastructure, our power grid has been failing. And we did not do as much as we could to shore up and strengthen that power grid. But we did take some small steps. And we didn't expand Medicaid, which would really address the fact that Texas has the highest rate of uninsured Texans. We could have done better, But one thing that we did do was for new parents, new mothers, for them to apply for Medicaid. So right now they have to apply every 3 months. And so what they did was they reinstated the original application, which was several years ago, because they took it away, and it went back to 6 months. So that's a slight win, but it's not a total win, because we really wanted it to be every year. So, in terms of what my constituents can look forward to, I'm going to continue to be their voice and speak out against those measures that would harm our community, like permitless carry. That's another one that passed that is not helpful. So it's another one that Texas is getting that attention for doing the most extreme. But I'd like to say that I will keep pushing to ensure that their voices are heard and given the opportunity to have those small victories until we can take over and turn Texas blue.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, when do you think that's going to happen? When does Texas turn blue from where you're sitting?
Well, we were hoping last election cycle, but I think we've got maybe 1 or 2 more cycles before we can truly turn blue. But I'll tell you this, it's going to be even harder because this is a redistricting year, and there's a bunch of Republicans who are in charge of drawing our maps. So I envision them drawing maps, gerrymandering, so that they pick up more seats and the Democrats lose them. So that's going to be another battle that we're going to have this fall in a special session. But, hopefully I'm going to be optimistic and say maybe 1 or 2 more election cycles. But that's very optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Well, we would love to see it. And it's lovely to talk to you, Representative Collier. Thank you so much for joining us. And keep doing the work you're doing in Texas. It's very appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.